Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and don't forget to order your half-price drink or slush anytime in the Sonic app.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up, man?
Howdy, I'm back. Thank you for managing all the Suns things, and thank you to Sam Cooper for filling in for me. Yes.
He did very well. Sam did very well in his big, grand opportunity at the podcasting in the big time. No, they're a more successful podcast than we are, so I shouldn't even put it that way necessarily. Shout out Sam. So how about those Phoenix Suns, buddy?
Oh, boy. We're recording this on Friday. We're one game out of the All-Star break, and the Suns did not look like they used that All-Star break for rest or getting better. I don't know, man. I'm not necessarily super surprised. I think when you look at the grand scheme of things, there were maybe some blips of hope, but then the last 8 games have just been kind of fallen off a cliff, the worst you could expect. And to me, I trace it back. I think the beginning of that last 8 games is that 2-game Portland series where, look, I get Portland was playing really well at the time. They've got some young guys. Maybe it's matchups, but if you lose 2 games to the Portland Trail Blazers in a row, that should signal you probably shouldn't even make the play-in at this rate. Now, obviously, it depends on a lot of other things. A lot of other teams are going through some stuff. Sacramento, new players. Dallas is just in a bad spot roster-wise right now. But, I don't know. Where are you at with this team and kind of how to view the rest of the season, I guess?
Yeah, that's the difficulty, right? I think to share our collective frustration as not only you and I, but I think fellow media members and guys like Sam and Mike, right? People who are breaking down this team on a week-to-week basis, on a day-to-day basis. I think fans are incredibly frustrated with the way the season is going, and us in this space are collectively frustrated just by how do we talk about this team anymore? I don't even know what to say. We have another month of radio shows to get through before baseball starts. And that's where my mind is at creatively. As a creative person who does this for a living, because I like to be creative and I like to write and I like to talk about sports in a creative way when we can. But there's just no way to do that with this basketball team anymore because it's the same ride and I can't wait to get off of it. I don't know how else to say it, but I'm just really looking forward to when this ends. And that is something that KD fans will hear or Suns fans will hear and just take it as a tone of not being grateful to watch this team, watch Kevin Durant, or think it's targeted or a slight at anyone. It's not. I'm just so ready to move on to a new era where there's more interesting things to talk about or just an interesting thing to talk about. I think something you and I were pretty excited for just with the Nick Richards trade was at least getting to watch a new player, see how he develops, see if he can take on this challenge. And we don't even get to see that. He's not even playing anymore. He played 9 minutes last night. There's nothing new to talk about with this team at all. We can talk about the Ryan Dunn stuff if you guys want, but we've talked about that a couple of times on the podcast already. We'll continue it again. I think the more interesting thing that is percolating certainly is a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff, because when you trade all those second-round picks that you really needed for a guy that you're not even playing, that speaks to a disconnect, or it speaks to the Suns front office whiffing to a tremendous degree on their midseason acquisition. But however else you want to say it, I don't know, man. Durant's last 4 games, the numbers are he's shooting 62%. He's averaging 30 points a game. He's playing 42 minutes per game in those 4 games, and the Suns lost all 4 of those games. And it's just the same story we've talked about so many times is KD is having an awesome season statistically. He has been their best player by a wide margin this year. But that is just that's not good enough, and it's not enough for this team to get where it needs to go. Again, you hear this and it's the type of thing where it sounds like criticism on his part, but I'm mute on him, and it's not. What I'm saying is in the grand scheme of things, like when you have a player like him playing at his ability, that should be enough to win 50 games no matter who else is around him. But they're not even going to win 40 with far more talent than like the team that I'm picturing in my head when I say you win 50, because this is a bad basketball team, Kevin. They're bad. And I mean team. I don't mean roster. I don't mean players. That as a team, they are one of the worst teams in the league, because all of the categories and statistics that refer to, you can read into how good of a team they are, how connected they are, all that kind of stuff. They're terrible at this stuff, and it keeps losing them games. I just don't know what else to say, because it's just the same thing. I said it in a new, different way, and I'm proud of myself for figuring out a way to do it, because when I started the podcast, I didn't know what I was going to say.
Yeah, so I'll use this time to give you a little break and a breather, just because I was on leave, for everyone listening, had a second kid. So I was in the hospital room. We were like past the giving birth part, and I'm just, sitting around helping, whatever, doing like, I'm not important in this story, but
doing dad stuff.
I fired off dad stuff, and I fired off a couple tweets because I'm just like reading all the KD trade rumors going into the deadline. Nothing happens there. They trade Nurk, all that stuff. So like my post trade deadline, I guess, rant or whatever is like, we'll talk about in a couple weeks probably, like if heads are gonna roll here, whether that's you talk about coaches, players, front office, whatever. I think at the end of the day, the trade deadline taught us, as much as they invested in making big swings, big moves, doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, they did actually, like from what we read and learned about the trade deadline from the Suns' end, they are, I think you agree, they're fully aware that this isn't going to work, right? So to me, like we already reached the breaking point, and they were trying to, I guess the way I've put it to people is, they've walked themselves straight into a corner really quickly financially and in terms of just flexibility, sustainability, all that stuff. And when the basketball product isn't even 500 basketball, then you got to walk yourself out somehow, even though that's going to be the most challenging thing. So if this front office, like they tried to get out of it, they really dug themselves in a hole and couldn't at this trade deadline. So it's going to be an off-season thing, and I think they're aware of that. And I think that's, I guess, what I'm looking forward to, beyond some surprising turnaround. Like where this team is.
Stop doing that. Stop. No. We're not allowed to do that anymore.
Don't even
on this
mention.
podcast.
Okay, I'm
People
sorry.
can do it anywhere. No, stop doing that. They're done. They don't deserve that anymore. They just don't.
Okay, so if I want to be a curious person about this basketball team, I'm interested in this offseason, the creativity that will need to be had in terms of getting out of the corner that they're in. I mean, that's the most simple way to put it for me, and that's where, like, I'm not excited about that. I don't think they're going to come out with, even if they traded KD or something, not anything great, but I think I'm excited to see if it's one good young player that comes back in draft picks. Like, I'm excited to see how it looks on paper once they start, we hear the rumors or they get it done, and then going into next season. So, like, I guess that's where my mindset is on this team. Like, the product on the court without Wemby out there for the Spurs, you're getting lit up to that degree. I think how many games have they allowed 119 points? The defensive ratings, bottom 3. The net ratings, bottom 3 in the league over the past 8 or 9 games. Like, it's just, it is what it is, man. It's hard to see a way out of this. And I guess the value of the play-in being a thing the last few years is this team somehow is still right there. But yeah, I don't know what to expect if they even got a game or two.
Yeah, it's interesting to briefly go there, how the play-in puts teams in a weird position, because the Hawks ultra sold at the deadline. They lost Jalen Johnson for the year, and they're probably going to make the play-in still, because there just aren't enough like competitive teams in the Eastern Conference. Like, we'll see if the Sixers can get up there, but after them, it's the Nets. Like, those are like the teams trying to chase them, and the Suns are kind of in a similar position where we assume that the Spurs, without Victor Wembanyama, that was, if you're listening to this and didn't see the game yesterday, or like we're off your phone completely, Wemby out for the year, blood clot at his right shoulder. Thankfully, it is a short-term diagnosis. Within it should be like a 6-month recovery, and he should be good. There's plenty of examples in the past of people dealing with blood clots like this and being able to still be successful and still have like the same career they would have. Because blood clots, obviously, it's a very scary medical term to hear about. It looks like they're too far gone now in the standings. Now, if they beat the Suns twice and they beat like the Kings, I don't know how many times they play the Kings anymore. I'll look that up right now as I'm talking. But that is a situation where you could be down to essentially 11 teams for 10 spots. And the Kings, like, you just shrug at them and go like, I don't know what you are, man. Like, you've got a lot of talent and like you've got a lot of actual, like, they've got a top 8 roster in the West. I just don't know how it sort of gels together.
Yeah.
Really at all. San Antonio does not play. All right. Excuse me. They play Sacramento once. They play Sacramento on March 7th. So that'll be a really big game for them if they're able to piece some things together over the next couple of games. They play Detroit, New Orleans twice, and Brooklyn before that. They've got some tougher games in the West as well, but they might be able to stay afloat for long enough to at least see that Sacramento game as a nice barometer for where they're at. What I'm curious for the rest of the season, to kind of stick with you on this, is when the breaking point is, because I thought it was mid-second quarter last night, and this is, I guess, subjective. I don't feel like it's a subjective thing, but so many people are saying the opposite, and I feel like part of it is just like routine pattern, like a bad loss against a bad team. It's like you just want to go out there and say they're not trying. Guys, I think they're actually trying. Like I actually think there was effort last night. And I know they're not like hair on fire, running around, grabbing every rebound like their life depends on it, and that's what we all want to see, of course. But I think relative to what we come to expect from them, they were trying last night. And after the 2 offensive rebounds that both happened in front of the Suns bench, so it was in the background on the television broadcast, after the second one specifically, when Grayson and Kevin were like right there and just like didn't seem to realize where the ball was, like half of the Suns bench like recoiled back. And I was like, okay. And then Julian Champagnie and on back-to-back possessions in transition, just diced him. Julian Champagnie, who's a fine NBA player, but is he a transition maestro? No. So I was like, okay, is this like the point in like not only the game but in the year where they're just frustrated enough and just like depressed enough about the way this has gone to just fold completely? They have folded at points this year, don't get me wrong, but I was curious to see if it was there, and it wasn't. They still had enough energy and intent in the game to stick with it. I am not trying to give them credit by any means. What I'm just illustrating is that from my vantage point, there is still a desire to compete and there is energy on the team. And I wonder when that is going to fizzle out, because this goes back to like the toxic locker room report and everything, and just how the players have kind of like laughed it off and like even made fun of it in the locker room when we're in there now. Like, it's not a toxic locker room by any means with what we're seeing. And on the floor, I don't really get that read or interpretation either. I know that there was the Bill Simmons tweet about body language and stuff, and like Bill's the GOAT in my eyes, but like, yeah, I just think he hadn't seen the team in a while, like, and especially up close. And it's like that is what they have looked like. Yeah, they look like a team that is supposed to be contending for a championship that is fighting for their postseason lives right now.
Here's my thing though about that. Like, I agree with you. Like, go look at, okay, Brandon Knight, for example, was the end of his Suns tenure was very much like this, where he gets a big contract, all that stuff, and he just like hit some wall in his career where he was trying so hard, but he just got worse the harder he tried. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, it was like defense, shooting, like just like it broke him, and that was kind of the end of his career type thing. I see a lot of
that was Book last night. Book was trying really hard on defense in a way that he hasn't in months, in my opinion. And it made him play
good,
worse.
Though. Right.
Yeah, and he wasn't playing great defense anyway, and it made him play worse on offense. It was bizarre.
And then what happens, like, Stan Van on the broadcast is like, why are the Suns not helping? And it's like, well, they're trying to defend the three because they've been so bad of it, and then they're just getting out of what they should be doing, is how I view it. Like, when you start trying too hard, trying to cover for other people's mistakes, taking risks, that sort of stuff, and then everything's just thrown off. That's where I see this team, but I'm giving them that credit, I guess. But I think the whole issue with this team, I don't know what like an actual athlete would tell me to this, who's been in a locker room, who understands how this stuff works. But the whole issue for me on this team is, yeah, maybe they have bad body language, put head down, whatever. But then they'll go high five and everything. And as things break down once again, 5 minutes later, they don't reach a breaking point. And that's the problem. Like, you need to reach a breaking point and someone just lose it on his teammates. Lose it in the locker room. I don't know if that happens. We're obviously not there. Coach doesn't show signs of doing it. But they're just doesn't.
It's already happened for sure.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's already happened at least a handful of times. I'm guessing we are beyond a half dozen outbursts in the locker room from someone. I'm not reporting anything here. I don't know anything, but I'm saying based on the way the season has gone and based on the way that we've read certain things being from our vantage point, I would guess that they've had animated discussions in the locker room over half dozen times. And guess what? It doesn't matter. Like, it hasn't translated to anything. You get the feeling that they don't care watching them.
Yeah.
Like, but I know they care, but you watch them and you're like, okay, you see how badly this is going and you're not playing at 100,000,000%. Like, it's just, there's a certain level of apathy there.
I think and this is again coming from a outsider sitting on your couch perspective, I want to see them care to the point of like yelling at each other on the bench more. Like, if someone was chewing someone out on the bench, it'd be like, well, they're trying to fix things in the live game action. Like, they go to the locker room at halftime, but otherwise they're out there and they're just letting stuff happen. And I don't understand. I don't know. I think fans would appreciate that more is all I'm saying, maybe. And that's the end of it. But to me, that says something about just no one's willing to step up and do that stuff and fix things in that quarter, in that moment, and not wait for halftime or the locker room or, the next day's practice. That's where I'm seeing, like, I just don't understand if there's the right vibes to fix things in real time even.
Yeah, and if Josh Okogie was still here, it would be like fans, and I agree with them, would just be like, just play Josh and Ryan 30 minutes. Like, it's just play the guys that are going to play absolutely their hardest, we know for sure, and they're going to try absolutely everything in their power. Like, again, like, that level of engagement and effort is just present from only a few guys on the team, and they need that and then some from every single guy on the team in order to get out of what they're in right now, and they're not going to, and that is why I can sit here with absolute certainty and tell you it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. Dunn needs to play more. I know people are like waiting for us to like yell about this or whatever, but it's been a couple episodes. It's very obvious he's just a rookie and he doesn't shoot well. And Budenholzer is looking for certain things on the floor when it comes to spacing and offense and just know-how defensively, where he's going to play Ryan defensively for his great on-ball defense, which he is great at. Don't get me wrong, he's a very good on-ball defender. He wants the know-how on how they're covering the ball screen, what they're switching here, what they're doing there. And like, that kind of stuff a rookie just doesn't have right now. So that's why he's not playing. Like, I can sit here and try and illustrate to you guys what Budenholzer is saying to us, but he is giving us these wishy-washy, mundane answers that don't really mean anything. It's just word vomit basketball style. So I can't sit here and actually tell you why he's not playing, but I give you my best guess, and that's why. I don't agree with it. I heavily disagree with it. I think he needs to be playing at least 20-plus minutes right now, and I understand that means Ty's playing less, or Grayson playing less, Royce playing less, Brad playing less. Also, just stop playing Kevin and Devin 40 minutes per game, because it doesn't seem to matter anymore anyway. You're still just losing a lot of games, so you could stop wearing them down, because that's the thing that's absolutely going to happen, by the way, is that they're going to get rolled in the last month of the season because of how much those guys are playing lately. Yeah. They're either going to get hurt or they're just going to be worn down. So even if they were able to hang on to the 10 seed because other teams suck more, they're just going to get rolled in that element anyway, because those guys are going to be absolutely worn down.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing. Like, the Spurs game, I think, was very much Wemby's not there. They didn't have any bigs, so the Suns just went super small with KD at the 5 or Bol. I am curious, though, if they reach a point where they're just like, let's look for opportunities to start playing Iguodala again, to start playing Dunn a lot more, just for the sake of getting them some run. Like, I don't know if Dunn's, like, he was a little banged up heading into the break, I think, right? And now, like, I have no idea if that's an issue still. But to me, it's like, you got to look for opportunities to give some of the younger guys a run. And, I mean, they were giving Ty run even, like, out of necessity heading into the break, and that was a little more, at least, forward thinking, I guess, toward next season, where you're just getting a little sense of what he could maybe give. But yeah, like I don't know where you go as far as rotations. Do you do it for the future? Do you do it? I mean, I'm sure they would say, no, we don't do it for the future. We're trying to get in the play-in. But I think there's value in wondering that.
I think we're good there.
Yeah. We'll have more. We'll give the bigger, broader stuff later on.
Yeah, the heads are gonna roll portions of the podcast. Guess what, everyone? We got 2 months of this left. There's a lot of time to get to talking about whether a head coach should be back, whether the front office should be back, whether certain players should be back. We've already hit on the players portion a lot this year. Those are the types of things that certainly warrant conversation right now, and we're just telling you that it's going to come a little bit later because we would love to sit here and break down the intricacies on the court, but there are none. There's zero. Not one. I'm telling you, there's not even one.
This is what happens.
You want me to tell you how bad their defense is? I mean, we can sit here and talk about like how they don't know how to stop a guy late who's hot. I mean that's the intricacies we can talk about.
When teams go backwards in a season to this degree, like that's the tough part. Is you can say very vague phrases like effort and consistency and execution, and that's all you can do. I don't know why they keep throwing the ball into 2 guys' arms who are on the other team. Couldn't tell you. But that's what's happening a lot, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
All right, well, we will be back next week to talk about the rest of this 6-game stretch, I suppose. That's kind of what we were outlining heading into this part of the schedule, is that it was these 6 games where you got to win at least 4 minimum, probably more than that before the schedule gets really rough, and this kind of loss further encapsulates why that is a big ask these days for sure. But we'll be back next week and we'll talk to you then. Have a good rest of your day whenever you are listening to this, unless it's at like 11:58 p.m. Then I hope the next day is great too. I'll give the people